Hello, my name is Mark Brazell, and I am the author of a book, A Matter of the Heart, My Unexpected Journey with Diabetes. I just had an interesting, very motivating, podcast and appearance on on Talking with Kevin and Sons. And on that show, I shared my experience with diabetes. I'm a type 1 diabetic for 26 years. And I'm trying to get the information out there that you can live with this and it's not a death sentence. You can if you manage it correctly, you can have a wonderful, wonderful life. But my focus is around awareness. My focus is around letting other people know that diabetes is not a death sentence. But we have to be aware. Our numbers are high. Their complications can be relatively high. But the fact of the matter is that if you exercise certain key health principles, all that can be managed comfortably. So I encourage you to check out that episode where I give tools and very important information that I think that would be a benefit to you and your family going forward. Thank you so much.
Welcome to Talking with Kevin and Son, where truth meets real. We talk life, love, and purpose.
Welcome to another edition of Talking Wit Kevin and Son, featuring the people you should know. Hi, I am Kevin McLemore. I am your show host, four-time published author, award-winning author, speaker, singer, songwriter, and some of my friends call me a mindset messenger. This episode is brought to you by RMK Productions and the 10 United Podcast Network. Through the power of a story, our mission is to uplift you through the power of your voice, to inspire, share stories and experiences and perspectives using the framework of teaching, learning, and modeling. Our purpose is very simple, folks. Hope, Hope, helping other people every single day. Now today, and I'm smiling when I say this because I have a very special featured guest. His name is Mark Brazell. He's a wellness strategist, executive performance advisor. He's a founder and CEO of MDB Live Connect. Mark comes to us with more than 300, not 300, I just made you Moses. Over 30 years of experience across medicine, cardiovascular science, and leadership performance. Early in his career, he has worked as a cardiovascular perfusionist, if I said that right. He has
Yep.
participated in more than 2,000 open heart surgeries. His professional path later expanded into senior medicine affair, leadership roles within global pharmaceuticals and medical devices and organizations. Mark's story goes far beyond his professional titles. For nearly 3 decades, he has lived with type 1 diabetes, a journey that forced him to redefine success, resilience, and what is truly meant to protect the most valuable asset we all have, our health. Today, through his work, his framework on health and sustainability, workforce performance, and his book, which we will talk about, A Matter of the Heart, My Unexpected Journey with Diabetes. Mark's health and leadership, his entrepreneurial spirit, his professional understanding, and his powerful truth. Without your health, you cannot fully lead, perform, or live the life you were meant to live. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Mr. Mark Brazell. Mark, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's a pleasure and honor to be here.
The pleasure's all mine. Mark, I hear that you're a Detroit Lion fan, right? All the way from Michigan.
Yes, I am.
Okay.
I say that lacklusterly.
No, don't be ashamed. Hey, Detroit's an awesome place. It's a great city, the Motor City, home of Motown.
That's
Hey,
right.
how many times have you visited the Motown Museum since you've been there?
Oh my goodness. I know probably max twice, but I know definitely I've been down there. Yeah,
Who's
they
your
weren't
favorite?
that far away from my late aunt's house.
Okay.
So
And who's your favorite Motown recording artist?
oh man, My wife's a big Aretha Franklin fan. Yeah, I can't say who. Well, I have to go back to the Jackson Five.
All right. All right. Hey, the only reason I'm asking these questions is because a lot of those guys I grew up with. So
Hmm.
anytime, I use the reference of, I'm making you Moses. When people hear me talk about back in the day, when
Yeah,
my younger brother talks about, he always talks about that I played cards with Moses. So since I had someone that has been around like me, I figured, hey, I'm going to toss this on you real quick.
that's right. That's right.
Um, just for
Yeah,
fun. But anyway,
absolutely.
to our listeners, the things that I want you to pay attention to, we have three things that I hope to cover in this conversation. I want Mark to explain to us why health is our greatest asset.
Hmm.
I want him to explain after his diagnosis why resilience through adversity, how he came about.
Hmm.
And most people, when they get knocked down, they just lay down.
Hmm.
Mark has been able to sustain a high level of performance. So, Mark, if I take you back to the very beginning, long before you were diagnosed with that,
Hmm.
I want to find out, even before you got into medicine, all right?
Hmm.
Because it's funny, back in my days, everyone was either going to be a teacher, doctor, or lawyer, or police officer. Um,
Yes.
let's peel back the layers of how your story came to be. It could be high school, it could be college, it could be a fraternity or whatever. Let's take us back to the beginning and paint for our listeners and our viewers a picture of Mark before today.
Well, it's interesting you asked that question. Many times I've had the opportunity to go and speak to youth, young people in high schools and even elementary schools, and I asked, they ask me the same type of question. What I tell them is, I'm a young man of resiliency. I remember I was just happy go lucky. I was a science geek. I enjoyed doing things that were, I call them, off the beaten path. I was not the typical kid.
Mhm.
Some of my habits were on the extreme side, and I love planes, I love trains, I love things that of course I did enjoy sports. Was very heavily involved in biking. I love to bike. Got little bit away from that when I started adulting, so to speak, but I still try to enjoy that. And what I try, one of the things that I think it really kind of establishes that medicine was not really my primary. Actually, when I graduated from high school, I really wasn't sure what I wanted to be. I think I wanted to be a pilot, but I didn't pursue that. And so when I graduated high school, I wasn't really sure. I wasn't really focused. And I tell people all the time, I did not graduate high school as a Rhodes Scholar. I graduated. I didn't get magna cum laude. I didn't get Kuma. What I got was thank you, Lottie. That's how I got out. Because and that was my
Thank you,
accolade. And
thank
and
you,
I
Lordy,
even
I
was.
made
That's right. That's the way it was. I'm like, I'm glad I got out of here. And I even entered Eastern Michigan under no academic scholarships, nothing. It was more so, if you survive a semester, we'll keep you.
it.
That's
You know,
how it
and
was.
and and that's one of the things that I know when I talk to young people that are making the transition from high school to trying to figure out what they're going to do with life.
Mhm.
Everyone believes that you've got to be, an honor student in
That's
order to
right.
get a college degree.
That's right.
You've got to be at the top of your class. You got to come
That's
from a
right.
well-to-do family. And a lot of people don't see the dream. I
That's
mean,
right.
coming up for me,
Hmm.
being the first out of 13 kids to get a college education, it
Wow.
meant the world to me. All
Yes.
right. So
Absolutely.
just before we get into your story a little bit more,
Hmm.
as
Hmm.
a doctor, most children of color don't see that dream coming true.
Hmm.
Most people of color, I mean, there's a statistic that says one out of every three Black males that enters college doesn't make it through his first semester or trimester in college. They drop out. And it's
Hmm.
one of every five Black females for whatever reason.
Hmm.
How did you survive becoming a different statistic? Because everyone that survives, I always tell people, when you drop out of a college, you're always part of that history of college because you had to get in to drop out.
That's right.
Now, when you graduate from a college, you're the example of the reason why college exists.
Right.
Don't make your university disappointed. by your existence.
Mhm.
So, how did you create a framework to survive that first semester?
Well, it's interesting. First of all, I just wanted to kind of clarify for those that's listening that a cardiovascular perfusionist is a clinical specialist. We're not physicians, but it's a very subspecialized area. You think of cardiac surgery, you have the surgeon, you have the anesthesiologist, and then you have the perfusionist. So every heart program has a perfusionist part of the program. And for me, you're talking about surviving that first semester, it was kind of surrealistic because when I was accepted into Johns Hopkins, their program, cardiovascular perfusion program, it was totally unexpected. It was kind of a last minute decision. And just getting in there, I think I kind of developed the resolve. I came from an HBCU, so I think that that gave me a sense of who I was entering this foreign environment that I was, I won't say intimidated by, because I wasn't intimidated, but it was definitely new for me, and it was a huge adjustment for me to kind of, to get used to. And I think that I think I got to a point where I'm like, if they can do it, I can do it. They're here, I'm here. They accepted me, they accepted you. Let's get it on. And so, I had strong faith. And another thing that I thought was important was I was able to surround myself with people that kind of, helped me to move this thing forward. I mean, a lot of people were very proud that I was able to get in, that I was able to get into this program. That while I was there, I had a chance to meet some pretty influential individuals, and so I think all of that kind of helped to reinforce the fact that, hey, I got in, I'm going to stay in.
I'm glad you said that you attended an HBCU, a historically Black college or university. There is, I think there's 1,007 universities around this country
Mhm.
that wear that badge. And a lot of times our children pick universities that they want to go to because we see them on the NCAA championships and whatever, but they're not always welcome. This is
That's
going to
right.
segue from the next question. I'm going to steer away from it. But the
Mhm.
reason why I say that because we need to promote. We need to see people that have graduated and are very successful in this field that
Mhm.
graduate from historically Black colleges, even though
Mhm.
that times right now are challenging. Why
Mhm.
is it important for doctors, lawyers, teachers, fitness professionals, and whatever to
Mhm.
have an HBCU tied in with their success?
Because I think with the HBCU, you know, one of the polarizing entities that we're dealing with today, obviously, race is a big issue. They talk about DEI and all that, which is kind of an interesting moniker when you see an administration that have people that are very qualified for what they've been appointed to do. But anyway, a segue to that, I think that one of the things that HBCU does, and what it did for me, was to heighten who you are. I think it gave me a resolve. It kind of, when you're able to celebrate you and you're around your people and you understand, the various, idiosyncrasies and the challenges we can all kind of meld together the different challenges. One of the things that when we're in school, I'm not concerned about a professor that assesses me based on my color. I'm more so concerned about, just basically my level of concentration, my level of focus, my motivation, that there's other components in which I'm evaluated, but that's not one of them. And I think that that in and of itself, where you're able to, pour in to us as a people, it really fortifies us when we go out and go into such a mixed environment like that, or in some cases, a Caucasian emphasis or strong environment, because you go in with a sense of who you are. And now it's not, you're not trying to compete in that rate level. We're not having any, I didn't have any ideals or any challenges with my identity. For me, it was just about, lining up, trying to do my best and getting the information, getting my work done. That was my thing. I could care less if they felt I was any less of, because uh, in the back of my mind, I'm in. I'm going to do what everybody else is going to do. And now, if you assess me, equitably, then I'm going to be fine.
All right, thank you. And that's the reason why I say the power of your story. We see the success of your story because you were that as a pedigree. Now, I don't know when we first met and we talked, and I don't know if I said this, but I know when I saw 2000 open heart surgeries, I've experienced one.
Oh
But
wow,
I also I went to school to be an Olympic track coach. And
wow,
so my degree is in kinesiology and exercise physiology.
yes,
And my
yes.
first 2 years I spent with med students.
Hmm.
And I'm going to tell you, I'm not a big fan for blood and guts. How did you do that? 2000 surgeries. And let me ask you this, because you're not the first student that has ever had to work on a cadaver
Hmm.
or had to see the internal organs of
Hmm.
a human being, an animal, and whatever.
Hmm.
There are going to be a lot of kids that are coming from our neighborhoods that
Right,
are going to go on these professions, and you're going to be the inspiration.
right.
Walk us through your first experience of seeing, and I'll tell you how I did it. I manipulated the situation. What was that first experience before the 2000 surgeries? And then we'll talk about the 2000 open heart surgeries that you had as a professional.
Yeah, it's interesting. When I was an undergrad at Oakwood University, that's, in pre-med, they really, it's a very, very, very strong pre-med program down there. And I remember it was my third year, either third or fourth year, where you were eligible to take gross anatomy, which is the first time like you said, seeing it, you're working on a cadaver. And to me, it was just, I think what made it so unique is it. I was able to connect the class, the person, with the individual, I'll explain that. For each cadaver that they had, there was a little bio of who that person was before whatever took their life, and whether and what the my particular cadaver actually was a banker, and he was in a bad accident, and that's he had already donated his, that was part of his mantra, that he donated his body to science. And it was just interesting to me to look at these bodies, and we're so focused on the anatomy of that, but you recognize that these were people that
Mhm.
had jobs, that had vocations, that were walking and talking and drinking and whatever. And just seeing all that, though, was just a magnificent thing when you recognize, wow, when we dissect away from who they are as an individual, and then we start to think about our own selves. I'm like, man, this is a heart, this is a lung, this is, and I think another thing that stands out is also lifestyle changes. Or how our lifestyle, in fact, impacts us. For example, we did see a cadaver that had, pretty tainted lungs because they were a heavy smoker. And I'm thinking to myself, man, if we really could see and do internally what we're doing to us, that'll change a lot of people's attitude on how they live their life.
I totally agree. Back in the day, I'm before your time. They used to have classes
Yeah.
about health and sexuality, and
Hmm.
they actually showed you um, the outcome and the process of,
Hmm.
venereal diseases and whatever.
Oh yeah.
And
Yeah.
for anyone that says it, wearing a soldier, covering of your soldier makes you uncomfortable, you
Yes.
need to watch one of those videos and see what the outcome will be. You
That's
would
right.
change your social behavior.
Yes, sir.
Um,
Yes, sir.
so, I'm proud of you, Juan, and I'll probably say this multiple times during this interview. And the other reason why I asked you the questions I asked you early on, because I have a lot of young people
Hmm.
that follow this show from 18 to 24 that
Hmm.
are trying to make decisions on what they want to be
Right.
versus who they are right now and who they're going to be. And a
Right.
lot of times we don't go into your profession or my profession because we think we're not academic.
Right.
And I always said some of the smartest people in the world were DNC students. Some of
Right.
the most successful people in the world get kicked out or dropped out of some leading universities.
That's right.
But the
That's right.
difference is they didn't give up.
That's right.
And I know I know how I felt when my last concussion and
Hmm.
I
Wow.
lost every memory I ever had. I didn't even know who my
Wow.
children were. I
Right.
can't imagine
Right.
knowing life living with type 2 diabetes,
Type one, yeah.
um, type 1.
Hmm.
Mark, thanks for correcting me. Is
Hmm.
how do you prepare life after the diagnosis, and how do you reshape or define your current success with this?
That
How do
is,
you live with that?
yeah, that's a tough question. In full transparency, when I was initially first diagnosed, it was a mental struggle for me. And actually, I actually diagnosed myself. It's kind of I'll make it really quick. My prior a year before I was diagnosed, one of the anesthesiologists approached us and said, "Hey, Mark, we want to, I went to a conference and we want to make some, build out a protocol or some sort of algorithm for our diabetic patients having heart surgery." And so, let's kind of include this, include that. So we had a little hot powwow to discuss what that would look like. And so that kind of got me into the mode of, okay, let me dig into, diabetes a little bit more, the pathophysiology of it, blah, 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 blah. And what was interesting is that the very next year, I had gotten married in January of that year.
Hmm.
Within 4 or 5 months into my new marriage, brand spanking new marriage, I started exhibiting symptoms, weird stuff. And it took me a minute, and I think I felt I was pretty atypical in that regards. Even though I was a clinician, I couldn't think that this is what's going on with me. Nah, whenever a new symptom would pop up, nah, this can't be that, can't be that. I was just in my mind, it couldn't be that. And then it wasn't until the last manifestation of the symptoms, and that's when it began. It dawned on me, are you kidding me? And so I remember I went home from the hospital. I was post call. I was driving and I had to use the restroom, and I just left the locker room that just changed. And I'm thinking, what's going on? And I went to a drugstore, and I remember it just kind of just hit me when I was in the bathroom, and I just went out and bought one of those over-the-counter glucose tests, and that sucker came back positive. I was floored. I was angry for years. I was because I'm like, ha, I didn't. I still was caught up in some of the stigma as to his etiology, as to his origin and all that kind of stuff. I was a healthy guy. I was active. I tried to watch what I eat. I wasn't, I didn't drink. I didn't smoke. I tried. That was my thing. And coming down with this thing, having a somewhat of a better understanding of some of the long-term complications of this thing, I'm like, how in the world could this happen to me? And it just got to a point where, as I having just gotten married, my wife was pregnant now. I made up in my mind that I had to come to grips with that. I'm like, it is what it is. Life goes on. What can I do about it now? And I think that's kind of how I had somewhat of a mental, a reservation in my mind that I can't sit on the side of the road for the rest of my life with this woe is me mentality. I have to move forward. What can I do? So that in my mind, I decided that I'm just going to be the healthiest diabetic I can be, and do all that I can to manage the condition and do all that I can to offset any potential long-term complications from this condition. And then that was my motivation. I
Right.
had a child. I had a daughter. Then and I said I want to be I want to be there for my child. And so that's what I had to kind of reset my mind, even though it took a minute, but that was my resolve.
Uh, I'm going to turn back the page to the top of this conversation when you talked about um, going through the process and knowing the symptoms. A lot of people don't know the symptoms, and I know a lot of um, people of color, I would say Black people, are have no idea anything about type 1 diabetes.
Mhm.
And so I know I talked a lot about prostate with
Mhm.
some of my older clients and so forth, and what
Mhm.
some of the symptoms. If you can just give us a template,
Yeah,
symptoms of concern that people should look into, and how they can test and what tests they should get in order to diagnose themselves before they see a
sure.
physician.
Sure, absolutely. First of all, there's a stigma with diabetes. You know, many people think that you become a diabetic because of poor health or because of poor lifestyle habits. That has an impact in certain types of diabetes. Type 1 diabetes is what they call autoimmune, meaning that your body, for some reason, there's a trigger and your body decides that your pancreas is not a part of its own. And your body's immune system now will destroy the very cells that create insulin. And so that and so your body is now, your immune system is now destroying these cells, which is reducing your insulin low, your ability to make insulin, which now prevents, allows your sugars to rise because you have less insulin to drive that sugar into the cells. And so as a result of that, that's type 1 diabetes, autoimmune. We call it insulin deficiency. Type 2 diabetes is a little bit different. It is more so has to do with a dysfunction of the pancreas, meaning that there's a multiple, I don't want to get complicated or get technical, but there's a multiple things that could be going on. It could be that, the muscle cells are not absorbing, they don't, the receptors aren't absorbing the insulin like they should, or your liver is leaky, and that's the reservoir for many of the sugar foods that we eat, is held in reserve there. Sometimes it may be a little leaky, which causes your sugar to elevate. And then there's, obviously the pancreas itself, where it could be releasing insulin, but the body is not absorbing it properly, or it cannot be releasing enough. And then all of this leads to the same thing, elevated blood sugar. So, and the difference between type 1 and type 2 is, besides type 1 being autoimmune, type 2 is reversible if you catch it early enough. If a lot of times your pancreas will get fatigued because it's trying to compensate for all of these different various levels of sugar in your body. So it's constantly, it's either working hyperdrive fast to try to reduce it, then it's down. But over time, it just gets fatigued, and that's where type 2 manifestation of diabetes comes from. And if you're able to correct that, whether it's diet, through exercise, and like you were saying, as an exercise, kinesiologist, that will help to minimize the impact of those swings, and preventing your pancreas from having all the, working so hard in overdrive. If it allows it to heal, then many times people can moderate the sugars based on what they eat, by their exercise that they do, and they can, sometimes they'll get off of any medicines, or they get off of any, if they have to take maybe insulin just to kind of moderate it, to keep it low, and they're able to, completely reverse the body, completely in that scenario, where you could just, going forward, just watch what you eat and just kind of maintain a little bit of activity, and you can manage it from there. But that's the major difference. A lot of people, I've had people come and tell me, I can reverse your diabetes. I said, if you're not doing surgery on me, either give me a new pancreas or stem cells. That ain't happening for me. But for type 2, it's reversible. It's the most common presentation, by the way. And it's kind of a weird dynamic as well, because type 2 diabetes also has, they have the more complex elements of complications as well. It's like everything is kind of hypersensitive in a type 2 diabetic. That's why it's so important for you to try to do what you can to, to kind of offset, kind of offset that through diet, exercise, and if they give you medication to initially manage it. But if it's reversible, do all you can to get it reversed, because sometimes you have, more severe complications as a result. They don't understand that yet. That's still under a great deal of scientific investigation as to why that particular presentation. I think the reason is because, as I stated before, there's so many different layers to type 2 diabetes than type 1. Type 1, basically, your pancreas just stops working, and your body destroys it. There's no more pancreatic activity. Now, you asked about tests. There's just two things that they do. One is a hemoglobin A1C. And a lot of times they'll perform that during a physical. And they'll just basically, that just tells them, what has your blood sugar been over the last 3 months? So, they can tell if it's been elevated, and there's a number scale that determines whether you're at risk, at your moderate risk. That's why they say you have pre-diabetic symptoms, because you may be on a higher end of those normal values, going on up, and they're seeing a trend that you're going up. So then they say, well, okay, you need to, be aware of this, watch what you eat, manage this a little bit so you don't, get full scale. Whereas type 1 diabetes, again, they run a test called C-peptide. And that basically is a test of inflammation. So that, they want to know, is there something going on? Is their body's immune system, really active? And that helps them to understand that, are you having any in any function of your pancreas whatsoever? And if that goes down low enough, then basically it'll tell you your pancreas is not doing anything. Where for type 2 diabetic, you are having pancreatic activity. It's just a matter of how is it being, manifested. Is it, like I said, if you're producing enough, and it's not being, registered, or if you're not producing, if you're producing, how is it being absorbed, that sort of thing. Whereas it's issue of production, or as issue of absorption. That's the kind of the two-pronged part of type 2 diabetes, if that makes sense to
It
you.
makes a lot of sense. And Mark, believe it or not, when you listen to your interview, once it gets released to the world, I'm going to tell you this little bit of a conversation right now. All right. And you can sleep on this tonight.
Mhm,
Someone's listening to you that has
mhm,
more questions than answers. What you just said right now has a strong possibility of saving someone's life.
mhm.
All
That's
right.
no, yeah.
Yeah. So I want to thank you for that. And I'm going to open the door to save a lot of other people's life with the next question. And the
Mhm,
reason why is because, motivational books and success or how-to books are some of the most successful
mhm,
selling books out on the market.
mhm,
And a lot of people, including young people, read Think and Grow Rich, how looking out for number one,
mhm,
seven habits of this type of person,
mhm,
the power of 10X, and you can name it, The Gap in the Game, which I love that book by
mhm,
Sullivan. The
mhm,
Gap in Game would have put me out of business if
mhm.
that book, it came out when I first started doing public speaking.
Right.
But many people I know, and probably a lot of people in your circle, we're all chasing success at the expense of our health.
Yes.
Why do you believe, and I said this at the top of the show,
Yes.
health must, your health must be treated as your greatest asset? I always say time is your greatest asset, but the way that you phrased it in your bio,
Mhm,
I got to look at how you spend time with your health.
mhm,
How do you talk to those people that are putting in, they're hired for 40 hours a week, but they're working 56 hours a week, that sacrifice family, friends
mhm.
in order to build someone else's boat, if I may say that,
Absolutely.
uh, and
Absolutely.
only to be sacrificed because they're not building fast enough, or they found someone that can bring in more material to the boat than
That's
you.
right. That's right.
So at the
That's right.
expense of your health with success, explain to us why health is your greatest asset.
Well, think about it. you know, First of all, health is first of all the one of the most misunderstood, or underappreciated components of your life. Many times people, I just give the example of this. Most people take better care of their cars than
True.
they do their own personal health. You buy yourself a Lamborghini. You're not taking it down to Bubba's gas station and putting in 86. You're putting in premium gas. You're putting in you're making sure the oil is changed on a routine basis. All these things you're following this thing to a T. But when it comes to us, we do what we want, and we think that there's no repercussions or consequences as a result of that. And the foundation, the reason, and to answer your question directly, is the fact that health is the foundation. If you don't really pay attention to your health until your health it becomes a problem. Most people, health is just a kind of it's a consequence. It's just it's what it is until it's not. And then when it's not, now all of a sudden you're really, paying attention to what's going on. It sounds like buying a new car. You know how you get a brand new car, and you buy that car, and you're on your way home from the dealership or wherever you bought that car. All of a sudden you're looking around, you're like, wait a minute, I never noticed all these cars. But all of a sudden your focus changes. And so
Right.
that's the way it is with your health. If you don't have your health, all of your life's ambitions, all of your goals, all your dreams are inconsequential if you laid up in a hospital on a ventilator, or if you are, for me as a diabetic, if you are dealing with significant diabetic complications. Being, diabetes is, we call it cardiometabolic, meaning that there's a thin line most of the cardiovascular diseases is called a cardio, we call it an accelerator because it heightens other complications. For example, my background as in vascular cardiovascular medicine, understanding that in vascular health, when you're talking about blockages and damage to the vessels and all these things can happen because of diabetes, and that's why they call it the multiplier. Because if your blood sugars stay high for X period of time, that will damage the inside lining of your vessels, which now opens up the door for other complications, whether it's heart attack, whether it's a stroke, whether peripheral arterial disease. When you're talking about blockages, all this stuff, they're all so intertwined. And so I tell people all the time that your health is your greatest asset because the healthier you are, the less complications you are subjected to. And without health, it doesn't matter what you do. It doesn't matter what you could be a premium athlete. But if your health is, and you see how many of these guys, they suffer injury, and so many of these guys are now dealing with issues after football because of the impact of just the brutality of the game, so to speak, we call it. But the fact of the matter is that if you're not healthy, which is your greatest asset, because when that goes down, there's really not a whole lot left for you to work with.
True. And it doesn't make a difference after that when your
It
health
doesn't
goes
make a
down.
difference.
How much time you have spent building someone else's ship is like how much time do
That's
you
right.
have to stay afloat?
That's right.
Um, I'm going to ask this real quick because I'm going to enter. I want people to know how to get in touch with you.
Sure.
Um, your social media, if you're doing public speaking.
Yes.
I'm going to come back and we're going to talk about your book, A
Okay.
Matter of the Heart. But
Yes.
first of all, I want people to be able to reach out to you both in the personal and
Hmm.
professional aspect. I would love to have you set up, people that are looking for public speakers,
Yes.
talk and inform people, especially in the workplace.
Yes.
Because I think
Yes.
healthy environments in the workplace and
Yes.
healthy responsibilities from employers to employees
Hmm.
keeps the workplace healthy and so
And productive.
and productive. So let's talk about how do we get in touch with you, Mark?
Well, the best way to reach me is just reach out to my website, which is MDB as in boy, Live Connect, LiveConnext.com. So it's MD Brezzell at MDB Live Connects .com. That's my website. And you can reach out to me as MD, MDB, MD Brazell at mdblifeconnects.com. That's my email address as well. And just reach out. My website, put in Mark Brazell, MDB Life Connects, and my website will pop up. As far as my book, are we talking about my book that you can get that off of Amazon? Just put my name in and put in Mark Brazell diabetes, and the name it'll pop up. But all of my information is on there. Yes, I'm available to talk to people one and many. I come to talk to you to a group, a company, organization, health fair, any public health facilities. I've spoken to reaching out to law firms, to high stress individuals, particularly in banking, VC world, those people who, like you said, burning candles on both ends. Because a lot of times when you're in the system doing your thing, health is not until health becomes an issue, you're just gonna keep pushing. But when you have somebody that's in the ear where you can step back and like, you know what, I did notice some things. Maybe I'm not sleeping. I am, doing a little overindulging here, overindulging there. Maybe I need to slow things down a little bit. And that's what I just want to do is just have the discussion just so I can give you an alternative way of looking at things to prevent things from happening down the road because we live in a society of intervention, but prevention is the key. I spent years in intervention, and the thing that kind of stood out to me the most, in cardiac surgery was the fact that most of these people wouldn't be here had they done more preventable activities.
True that. And it's amazing. I just released a recording of the 12 principles
Mhm.
that changed my life that made me successful. And I realized that when I got to the 12th one, when I was talking about rest and recovery. I
Mm,
found out that I was not being very honest with myself because you had said, most of us that are chasing whatever we're chasing in life, and that how we define it as success.
right,
I was always lighting the candle both ends and trying to light it in the middle. And where I
right,
was sacrificing is that I convinced myself since 14 I didn't need rest,
right,
and I can function highly without with 3 or 4 hours of sleep. And I realized as I started to mature
right,
that was a lie that I was living. But
right.
anyway, enough about me. I want to talk about what inspired you, or what the inspiration was behind the book, A Matter of the Heart, and what message do you hope for your readers to learn from your story?
What the inspiration came from actually a conversation I had with a friend of mine a few years ago. Matter of fact, he was an ex-classmate of mine when I was in high school, and he knew I was a diabetic. He pulled me aside, he sought me out, and he said, "Man, Mark, I was in the hospital for almost 3 weeks. I almost died. When I went in, and I had basically my kidneys were only like functioning like 30% or something like that. And they had difficulty trying to reverse all this thing. And I almost died. And I didn't find out until I got to the hospital that I was that diabetic. I was type 2 diabetic. And it just scared me. I never thought I'll see my fight, vitality in front of me, and my mortality was there. I'm like, man. And after speaking with him, I've been in industry for many years. When I left the hospital, I worked in industry within medical affairs departments. My last one was with a medical device company. We were actually developing devices for intervention for carotid artery interventions, preventing stroke, and also peripheral, the lower limbs below the waist devices to open up vessels in the legs. And so I was still in touch, and it just kind of came to round and round. And I'm like, listen, I've been a diabetic now for 26 years. I've been in hospital for 10 years. I've been in industry now for 26 years or 23 years at the time. And I said, now is the time for me to step out and educate, because I'm seeing it's amazing to me how such a condition that is so complex, such a condition that is so multifaceted, we don't know about. Or we don't talk about. I should say that we know a whole lot about it, and I call it the 3 degrees of separation, where I could say, do you know anybody, or do you know anybody who knows somebody that has diabetes? And everybody, all hands. I know. It was a family member, a friend, somebody knows somebody, and I'm like, well, why don't we talk about it a little bit more than? And because if the more you know, the sooner you know, the better your outcomes can be. And
Right.
that's my focus, and that's why I formed my wellness platform to educate on all levels, whether it's work life, or whether it's home life, or whether whatever step of phase of life that you're at, to help them understand that there's symptomologies that you have to look for when you go to the doctors, get physicals, just get checked out. Don't sit on symptoms. I always tell people, and whenever I talk about health is your greatest asset, that you know you better than anybody. And you know when something's not right. Don't put it under the rug. Don't put it under the table, because I'd rather them tell me that there's nothing wrong with me if you go to get it checked out, versus them saying, man, I wish you had come here 6 months ago, 2 years ago.
Now, I want to ask you because I know I said I created 12 principles and I recorded that. And I'm probably going to help you record your 8 principles. We're going to do that. But this is just bouncing off the top of my head. Type 1 diabetes,
Mhm.
um, does it affect one gender over another, one race
Right.
over another, or does it affect all people?
All people, any time in your life. Initially it was initially coined adult onset, but that's changed now, or juvenile, I should say. It was initially coined juvenile diabetes, and then as they start discovering, they start recognizing, wait a minute, I was 31 years old. I'm 60 years old now. I was 31 when I was diagnosed. My brother was 19. I think he was 19 or 20 when he was diagnosed, and that was because of a reaction to a steroid shot that he had gotten while he was in the military. And within 3 weeks of the shot, he was in the hospital. Come to find out, and he was dealing with that type 1 diabetes. So no, diabetes is it doesn't matter who you are. In fact, the country, this is what blew me away, because I know for years India was the number one municipality, number one country dealing with diabetes, which I'm like, I thought it was the United States. But now China has just overtaken them as the number
Whoa.
one nation, country that's dealing with diabetes. And I'm thinking, huh? Because I look at but again, the fact of the matter is, it doesn't really matter who you are. It doesn't matter your socioeconomic standing. It doesn't matter your color. It doesn't matter your race, your paycheck. It doesn't matter. These are things that you need to pay attention to, and get yourself checked out. Now, you see things that's not, if you're losing weight unexpectedly, or you're having weird manifestations where you're thirsty all the time, or you eat like a horse and you're not gaining any weight, and you have frequent urination, or you have sores that don't seem to heal very quickly. Just get all that stuff looked at, because that's a sign that something's not right, and you need to, get it investigated, because the earlier, the better.
That's all right. So let's talk about the eight keys that to health, your eight principles. And can you explain these eight key principles on how people can build and maintain this sustainable performances?
Well, the fact of the matter is pretty, like I say, you as a kinesiologist, this is right up your alley, but it's a very simple thing. It's fresh air. You need that oxygen. You need to be out there walking, and that goes on top of exercise. So fresh air, exercise. That's number two. You have, you need rest. You need a good diet. You need, so basically fresh air, sunshine, water, fresh water. You got to stay hydrated with 70% water. If you don't drink enough water, that causes a whole lot of problems on so many different levels.
Do
Uh,
that.
again, like I said, rest is where not only does it help your body, recuperate and recapture, but that's where healing takes place during the rest cycle. So when people don't get enough rest, when your body endures the rigors of its day, you don't have a time for your body to recover and recuperate. So that just opens up. So that means you just going back out the next day for another, preponderance of activity without having, kind of refreshing from the last day. And if you keep that up, now your body's gonna start breaking down, and that's where a lot of these problems occur. So, I'm trying to think of the other ones. Like I said, exercise, fresh air, sunshine, fresh water, rest, exercise. Then you have what we call it temperance, and you got to have moderation. Everything requires moderation in this life, and so many times people are so extreme. And I'm sure in your line of work you see how everybody on these different diets. These crash diets trying to lose this, and the people now taking the GLPs, and then all these drugs trying trying to get this rapid weight loss, and that sort of thing. And then some people, the last component of it is kind of a trust, having a trust with some people, whether it's like a trust in God, a trust in higher power, a trust, meditating, stepping outside of you, and being able to channel your focus and your energies away from, just all this crazy everyday life that we living in. But those are the things that are critically important. We gotta, your diet. You can eat a certain way to make your body more resistant and resilient to many of the stressors that you're going to be, enabled, that you're going to be subjected to. So all of these things are critically important. For diabetes, diet, exercise, drinking good water, sunshine, vitamin D, all of these properties helps strengthen your body's immune system, helps with your whole cardiometabolic state. I mean, everything is so intertwined, and so often we segment health. I remember, I give a quick example, and I'll be done. But there, for example, people say, "Well, they told me I'm at risk for a heart attack," but I tell them you're also at risk for a stroke. And if you're at risk for a stroke, you're also at risk for peripheral arterial disease. I mean, because it's the same system, it's the same process causing the same problems, just in different locations. So I
Mhm.
tell people all the time, you just gotta connect the dots and do what you can do to be as healthy as you can be, and you can have the best life that you can have as a result
All
of
right.
not having a lot of complications.
Mark, you gave us a lot of information, and I don't want to leave any meat on the bone, but I want to revisit your book, The Matters of the Heart. How can we get your book? I want to revisit how do people get in contact with you? Social media, personal phone, email address, and so forth. If you don't mind sharing one more time.
So again, my website is www.mdbliveconnext.com. So that's my website. And on my website, it has all of my information. And, if you want to book me as a speaker, or you just want to get in contact with me, you're able to get, that website gives you all that information. Even if you're interested in purchasing my book, that you can also do that on the website. I have all the access. It's kind of a one-stop shop there. And so that's kind of why I always send people to the websites, because you can see other social media activities that I was involved in. One of the things I'm focusing on now is definitely stress, because I help people understand that stress even is a potential complication. It's even precursor to diabetes, as well as many of the cardiovascular impacts, that people are that's pretty prevalent. So I tell people, if you reduce, because stress can cause your liver to I guess it become leaky, which again, your liver restores a lot of glucose, and that raises your blood sugar. Now your pancreas again is compensating. So type 2 diabetes actually can be a result of people who are in a very, very, very stressed environments. So people, this stuff is connected. We are interconnected, totally connected. Comprehensive. It's not just a one and done. Health is not a pill. Health is a lifestyle.
All right. So, before we sign off, first of all, I think that I said this earlier. I think you may have saved one life, but I think you have enlightened the 10,000 people that listen to this podcast, which I hope they share with a loved one that is at risk, or they adopt the mentality that you have to make a shift in their mindset
That's right.
and find out what true success is. It's
Yes.
taking be active in a part of your health success. And that way, if you're healthy, you can manage your time
Yes, sir.
much better.
Yep.
Need to ask you this.
Yes.
When people hear your story,
Mhm.
okay, what is the one mindset shift you hope to create from doing interviews or having conversations on podcasts like mine? What do you want people to take away from this?
Well, I think a couple of things. One is awareness. I want you to realize that with every cause, there's an effect, and I just want that there's consequences, and understand that many times we have you're not going to be young forever. And so you don't want to put yourself in a situation where you make crazy vicariously decisions early on, and then now you're spending the rest of your life chasing the consequences of that. Be aware. Try to moderate. Try to take on as healthy a lifestyle as you can, because binge drinking and smoking and all these things you do in your youth are going to have a long-term consequence. And so, I try to help people understand that brevity is necessary, moderation is necessary, but the main thing is that you want to do whatever you can, because usually when you get around that 40 to 50 time frame, all of the negative things you did to your body will now start to truly manifest. So for many of the young people listening, you're not going to be young forever. And your body's, the better care you take in your youth, more longevity you'll have after the fact. So I just want people to be aware of that. And I think the final thing is that if you know your body better than anybody, any doctor, nurse, therapist, you know your body better. If something's not right, get it checked out. Don't sit on symptoms.
All right, all right. Mark, make it a habit of making sure that when I have a conversation with someone, because I don't do interviews, I hate interviews. I want to make sure I don't leave any meat on the bone, especially for my listeners. I don't want to sell them short. Is there anything that I may have missed that we should have had a conversation about that you can think of that you want to make sure that we mention? 'Cause I don't want to leave any meat on the bone.
Only thing that I want to do, only conversation that I have, and it's more relative to diabetes, is that if you go to the doctor and you are having issues with your legs, and the doctor looks at your legs and they say, you're having some damage. There's some things you need to do, and if they say basically that amputation is your only option, seek a second opinion. There's multiplicity of ways of intervening, in the vasculature for peripheral arterial disease, which is a complication of smoking. A lot of challenges can cause that. But I just want people to be aware because we're the number one demographic. We're the number one demographic that undergo amputations. So that's kind of my big pet peeve is I want our people to know and anybody to know that there are options. I worked on it personally when I was in the industry. I developed techniques and therapies, so I know that there are clinicians that are trained to be able to go into into the legs that can open up vessels in your lower limbs, just like they can go into your heart and open the vessels there, or they go up into the brain. They can definitely do that in the lower limbs, and that's not as well. Most people don't push that. A lot of clinicians don't even give you that option. They basically tell you that we'll just monitor your situation until you get to a point. And I just want to say no, no. Get it. If that's their only option to give you, I'm out.
Mark, I just want to thank you. And to our listeners, I want to say this. Today's conversation reminds us of a simple but powerful truth. Your health is your greatest asset.
Yes.
You can rebuild wealth, you can rebuild a position, but without your health, your ability to lead, create, and serve is limited. Mr. Mark Brazell's story is a reminder that adversity does not have to end with your journey. It can be redefined with your purpose. His life teaches us that resilience, awareness, and intentional living are the foundations for sustainable success. If you protect your health, you protect your future. To our listeners, subscribers and followers, and the people that are tuning in, I want to thank you. We appreciate your continuous support, and we welcome you to comment. And I think this is one of those podcasts that you should definitely share. If you like what you have heard, you can find us on our YouTube page at RMK Productions and Network, or you can reach us directly by mail, rmkproductions.org. Wait a minute, let me say that wrong. I screwed up my own email, rmkproductions@org.com. That's my email address. Well, let me say this. My grandfather always said education was not designed to make you comfortable. It was designed to make you think.
There you go.
He also said when you get to a point in life where you can help someone, like my guest today, it's your duty to do so. He said, reach one, teach one. With that said, this is Kevin, and we're out. We'll fade to black. Until next time. Thank you, Mr. Mark Brazell.
Yeah.